Good evening. I'm Tom Powers, Head of Adult Services at the Flint Public Library. On behalf of the staff and the friends of the library, welcome to the Julia A. Moore Poetry Festival, or as we like to call it here, an evening for the poetically challenged. One of life's most precious gifts is laughter, and the ability to provoke laughter is an art. We are here tonight to pay homage to a veritable Van Gogh of laughter, whose medium was print instead of paint. Julia A. Moore, a Michigan-born and bred poet, was blessed with an innate, heaven-sent ability to write funny poems. While others worked for hours to turn a hilarious phrase or write a funny couplet, Mrs. Moore did it instinctively. But sometimes, as sometimes happens with any great gift, the seeds of tragedy are carried along with it like an unwelcome hitchhiker. Born in 1847, Julia A. Moore was blindsided by the muses while a teenager. Poems seemed to bubble forth from her almost unbidden. From her teenage years into her adulthood, as the wife of a hardscrabble farmer from western Michigan, she produced deeply felt and highly sentimental verse almost at will. Her first book of poems, The Sentimental Song Book, was published in 1876 and paid tribute to hometowns, noble deeds, and most frequently were long and sorrowful tales of tragic and untimely deaths. In a press release, that should be down in history, that accompanied the book, the publisher wrote, "This book, quote, should prove a health lift to the overtaxed brain. It may divert the despondent from suicide and guide the gentle thoughts into pleasanter challenges." Indeed, little did the publisher know what he was unleashing on the world and how prophetic his words would be. Julia was gifted. Ah, but what was the gift? Published and written as dead serious works, the overwrought and maudlin poems were unintentionally and hilariously funny. It wasn't enough. If that wasn't enough to make the poets and the critics howl, her poems also broke every rule of grammar, rhyme, meter, and sensible choice of words. The book met a tidal wave of derision from reviewers, and when Julia went on the lecture circuit, she was nearly laughed off the stage. In Grand Rapids, when she read, the Grand Rapids newspaper reviewed her reading with these words: "What a reading it was! What defiance of all rules of grammar, elocution, sense, rhetoric, eloquence, oratory, inflection, compass, quality, execution, cadence, emotion, pitch, and gesture, and others did this untutored plebeian indulge in." At the end of the entertainment, several young men, as evidence of their appreciation of Miss Moore's talents, presented the lady with a fragrant bouquet of cabbage, unquote. At the urging of her husband, she stopped making public appearances. In fact, it was at that recital that she told the audience, "You all paid 25 cents to look at a fool. I was paid $50 to look at a room full of them." In the next book of poetry she published, the very first poem in the book ended with these 4 lines: "And now, kind friends, what I have wrote, I hope you will pass o'er, and not criticize, have some have done hitherto here before." It's very tempting to feel sorry for Julia Moore. Instead, we should acknowledge that Julia was a possessor of a gift, no matter how unwilling a possessor, that has brightened many a life. If laughter is a healer, then Julia Moore had the healer's touch, and that's why we're honoring her here tonight. Her healing presence is in the house, as are several members, in fact 4 generations, of Julia Moore's family. If you would please stand when I read your names. Leslie Moore, Jolene Moore. Stand up, Jolene. No, doesn't want to. Robin Moore. Sally Day. Sally Day. Pat Lipsky. Annette Menard, and Jenny Friels. A letter accompanying one of this year's submissions to the contest claimed that the writer was, quote, a psychic channeler for Mrs. Moore. She went on to say that she frequently calls upon me to scribe for her for hours on end. Mrs. Moore's submission last year through a less agreeable channel who always argued with her did not even make honorable mention, unquote. Unfortunately, this letter writer was no more successful. Maybe she was a false channeler. Her poem did not receive any honors. The answer as to why is here in the audience with us tonight. That is Mrs. Linda Moxham of the Flint Youth Theater. Last year when she read a sampling of Mrs. Moore's works, it almost appeared as if the poet had been reincarnated before our eyes. Linda also felt the presence and readily agreed to return this year. She will be ably accompanied on the guitar by her husband, Guy Moxham. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our Julia A. Moore a warmer and more heartfelt welcome than the one she received in Grand Rapids so many years ago.
Good evening. Right now I speak as Linda Moxham. Sometimes when I read Julia's poems, something comes over me and the muse, excuse me. Good evening. I collect string. It is so lovely to be here to read my poems. Alcohol is vile. I'm not reading yet. Alcohol is vile. It destroys families. And I would like to share with you this evening Red Ribbon. The red ribbon is all the go. It is the temperance sign, you know. It is seen wherever you go, on men who dare do right. Dare to do right. Dare to do right. Let your motto ever be, dare to do right. It is no disgrace to wear that badge of red ribbon, dear youthful lad. Your mother's heart will make it glad to see you dare do right. Young friend, don't fail to sign the pledge and don the badge of ribbon red, and leave some ways you have led. Always dare do right. Friends that love you is glad to see that you can let vile, strong drink be. Their hearts rejoice in highest glee to see you dare do right. 3 cheers for all red ribbon men, and also those that is their friend. God will be with you to the end. He's ever on the right. As I said, families suffer because of alcohol abuse. Willie's and Nellie's wish. Willie and Nellie one evening sat by their own little cottage door. They saw a man go staggering by. Says Willie, "That's Mr. Lenore. He is just going home from town where he has been in a saloon." When Maggie and I came from school, said Maggie, "Please, Papa, come home." She asked him again and again to come home, and at last he got angry and said, "Maggie, go home. Don't bother me so. Go home now and shut up your head." Poor girl, she came weeping all the way as though her poor heart would break. She could not play, not a word would say, with playmates no pleasure could take. "'Tis the same child," Willie replied. "I'm sorry for Maggie Lenore. I wish her papa would sign the pledge and try to be a man once more. He drinks up all the money he earns in whiskey, rum, gin, and beer. His home is a home of poverty, made so by his own career." Says Nellie, "I wish Mr. Lenore would go to the meeting tonight and hear the temperance lecture. Then perhaps he would try to do right. One more little home of happiness would be in our midst, I am sure. Then Maggie Lenore could say with joy, 'My papa don't drink anymore.'" Said Nellie, "I told her never mind, we would be her friends evermore. I hoped her papa would sign the pledge, then he would not drink anymore." Then smiling through her tears, she said, "The temperance pledge you mean? If papa would sign it, then mama and I will take comfort, I ween." "I wonder," says Nellie, "can it be the same child I saw go to school? She wore ragged clothes. I saw her toes were peeping out of her old shoes. She has curly hair and mild blue eyes. Can this child be Maggie Lenore? If it is her, I secretly wish her papa won't drink anymore." Since this has been a serious evening thus far, I would like to read you one of my most genteel poems. I love it so. Croquet by Moonlight. On a moonlight evening in the month of May, a number of young people were playing at croquet. They mingled together, the bashful with the gay, and had a pleasant time and chat while playing at croquet. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet. On that pleasant evening the moon shone clear and bright, and every heart among that crowd was filled with great delight. It was a merry party, for Lady Dell was there. Her merry laugh above the rest was heard by all so fair. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet. She was the belle that evening, admired by great and small, and all the boys liked to play with the girl and blue ball. She was a splendid player, so lively and so gay, for she was skilled in playing that pleasant game, croquet. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet. Two young men among them that loved this pretty dell. Although I write about them, their names I will not tell. They were fine young fellows, so bashful and so gay. They tried to beat that girl with the blue ball play. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet. Oh, with those handsome fellows, Dell thought she'd have some fun. The one of you that'll catch me may see me safely home. The play began in earnest between those fine young men. To catch the girl with the blue ball was impossible for them. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet. She went round the playground so full of life and gay. She left them at the farther arch, so she beat them at croquet. It was late that evening, and as I went away, I know not how they came out in that pleasant game, croquet. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet. So croquet by moonlight is pleasant, as you see, for business cares were laid aside in that little company. So playing at croquet, croquet, so playing at croquet, it is amusement for the young folks, this play of croquet. This play they call croquet, croquet. This play they call croquet. It is amusement for the young. This play they call croquet.
Okay, let's get on with the program. Well, we've heard from the best, and now we'll hear from the rest. But before we are treated to a reading of the finalists' poems in this year's contest, and treated may be a poorer and more inappropriate adjective than any Julia ever used, we will listen to Jan Worth and Danny Rendelman lament on the current crop of entrants and the psychic damage incurred by serving as judges of this contest for the last 3 years. Danny and Jan are both well-respected poets who also teach at the University of Michigan Flint. I don't know what effect this judging has had on their standing among the poetry and academic communities. Maybe it's better not to ask. Ladies and gentlemen, Jan Worth and Danny Rendelman.
I'm the warm-up act. In the past, I've been the statistician of our duo. This year, I have tired of the empirical approach, and I'd like to try a little more impressionistic sharing with you. So I'm going to tell you in a more impressionistic way, who are the 1995 Julia A. Moore bad poets? To quote and only slightly paraphrase another Michigan poet, Theodore Redke, they are like his character in a poem called The Academic. The stethoscope tells what everyone fears. You're likely to go on living for years. With a nursemaid waddle and a shop girl simper, and the style of your poems growing limper and limper. My friends, the 1995 Julia A. Moore poets are not the natural-born killer poets of yesteryear. Metric, Mickey and Mallory's, mindlessly mutilating material from small mammals to mom. Gone are the misplaced, methodical, Lee Harvey Oswald rages and suicidal rhythms. Gone are the excretory fascinations, the love of roadkill, and the bent, appealingly pathological obsession with reducing old girlfriends and ex-husbands to a sort of Jeffrey Dahmer simplicity. The 1995 class are, alas, the Forrest Gump poets. Plodding innocently, nay, ingenuously, nay, dully, through a wasteland of ordinariness and, nay, stupidity. They are sweetly slow-witted and, nay, moronically vapid. These are couch potato poets, carbo-loaded into a semi-coma or a semicolon. They have eaten cheerfully through their material like the menu at Denny's, and all it would take is one thin mint for their whole monotonous project to explode, spewing ham gravy and damp crinkle fries into the ozone. Well, that's how last year's poets would have described it. This year's poets would have said, I'm really, really full, and I think I have gas, but the banana cream pie reminded me of my Grandma Beulah on my mother's side from Alpena, where the sun rises red in the east, and the Michigan militia are really, really nice once you get to know them. As you'll find out, these are poets with a sinus infection. Nasal nostalgics. Poets who don't read the paper. Poets who wouldn't mind being sequestered for 8 or 9 months as long as you showed Little House on the Prairie reruns. They're not mad about anything. The only roadkill here is in the laundry room where a parakeet and a wringer washer, well, you'll find out. There are no fantasy homicides, only a personal ad selling a husband and a kitty. These are mildly bad poems, poems of senescence. These are neutered poets, as happy as my 14-pound cat to just roll over fatly in the sun, ignoring last year's sharp-toothed squirrel poets ripping up the cedar feeder. Once again, Theodore Retke provides an appropriate summary in his poem, The Gentle. Delicate the syllables that release the repression, hysteria masks in the studied inane, Horace, the hiker on a dubious mission, pretends his dead bunion gives exquisite pain. The son of misfortune, long, long has been waiting, the visit of vision, luck, years overdue. His laughter reduced the sing-song of prating, a hutch by the exit, his room with a view. Oh, cursed be the work that gets honorable mention. Though home is not happy, where else can he go? Necessity starves on the stoop of invention. The sleep was not deep, and the waking is slow. My friend, my friends, this year, thank God, the bad poets of America are on Prozac.
Good evening. I really look forward to judging this contest each spring. I like to think it marks that point in the year between what Shakespeare referred to as the winter of our discontent and what Julia Moore would likely have called the summer of our dysentery. On Sunday, my co-judge and partner Jan and I participated in the second annual Rouse for Retke in Saginaw, in which a couple dozen gullible people read the entire collected works of Saginaw native Theodore Retke aloud to each other. Well, not at the same time. We took turns. But I find it to be a rather cosmic irony that 3 days later we would be present at the third annual Julia A. Moore Poetry Festival. Now, if that isn't a textbook example of going from the sublime to the ridiculous, I don't know what is. But in reality, the connection is not all that far-fetched. Theodore Retke spoke plaintively in his notebooks and his letters about the sense of cultural isolation and literary loneliness during his school and university days in Saginaw and Ann Arbor, and occasionally pointed out that, looking back even further, the only regional ancestor he honestly owed a poetic debt to was Julia A. Moore. I'd like to begin my talk with a quote from the poet and editor David Wagoner, who said, "Poetry is not innately despicable like fascism or rhubarb." Well, David Wagoner didn't have to judge this contest. Now, I don't know much about fascism, although the '94 elections are only a few months into taking effect. But I know rhubarb. It's a noxious weed that some misguided souls believe is edible. It's a stringy, fibrous plant that, when cooked down for such monstrosities as strawberry rhubarb pie, resembles nothing as much as a hemorrhage. My dictionary describes it as any of several plants of the buckwheat family, about which the less said the better if you've ever had pancakes made from that, having large leaves, which are poisonous, by the way, with thick, succulent stems, often used for food. Used as food. How quaint. Often grown in China and Tibet, where it is used as a purgative. Classified under the genus Rheum. Turning to rheum, I find it says that it is a watery discharge, especially of the nose and infected eyes. I ask you, but I digress. I'll let you be the judge of what we have in a weak moment not set fire to. Last year, I intimated that some of the cover letters for the submissions verged on bribery, shameless plays on our sympathy and guilt, and threats. I would like to be able to say this year was different, but I would be a big fat liar. No, this year's batch of entries included the following pitiful attempts at swaying our integrity. A poem written on the back of a Smoke Rise membership contest form that smelled suspiciously of Cantonese gourmet chop suey. A poem tied around a rock, tossed through our picture window and signed Love Vito. That is a finalist. Several poems copied from the Wide Awake Club pages in the Flint Journal, attached to a photo of a little girl on a pony and a message demanding to win or the pony would be shot. A poem beginning, "Let us go then, Pootie Pie, while the evening is spread out against the sky, cha-cha-cha." A videotape from Ed Wood of what appeared to be Bela Lugosi reciting sonnets from the Portuguese Man-O-War, though he was replaced halfway through by a look-alike chiropractor. And finally, the entire chapter of Tau Kappa Epsilon serenading us under our broken picture window with fraternity drinking poems. But I digress. Being a judge for this contest is much like being a psychiatrist, or a better analogy might be Ann Landers, since the entries are anonymous. But we are subjected to hundreds of poorly concealed, well, problems. It's frightening. We receive from all over the country rantings and ravings from diseased minds under the guise of poetry, an excuse to vent hostility toward barnyard fowl, in-laws, small appliances, small sexual apparatus, and poetry judges. But I digress. Who are these people, and what do they really want? Hasn't it occurred to any of them what they are doing? vying for the very questionable fame in a bad poetry contest, for the privilege of appearing in a book with several other misfits, fringe elements, ne'er-do-wells, potential serial killers, and pharmacists. Vying for what has all the appearance of being a bowling trophy from a 1972 bankrupt league in Peoria who named themselves the Kmart Keglers. Well, it's not for me to judge. Well, actually it is. And I did. We did. My wife, my cat, and I. Our cat, Tater, was a big help. When the concept of the contest was patiently explained to him, he would give assistance by lifting his leg or his paw over a likely candidate. And so I leave you with 3 thoughts. Thanks for coming, enjoy yourselves, and blame the cat.
Hard act to follow, but we have now reached the nadir of the evening's proceedings, when we will be subjected to the 14 poems picked as finalists in this year's contest. Many of the poets will read their own compositions, but for those who could not attend or understandably felt uncompelled to read them in public, we have assembled a distinguished company of readers. They are Linda Moxham, Guy Moxham, a distinguished financial and investment counselor by day, a talented actor by night, Jim Holm of Buckham Alley Theater, and Norma Hall of Channel 12 News. Among her other duties at Channel 12, Norma reports on the weather every morning, and heaven knows anybody who can report on Michigan's weather has to have a sense of humor. When I asked Jim, who is a director as well as a playwright and actor, to look at the 14 poems and help decide in which order they should be read, he startled me with the observation that he detected a cosmic pattern in the submissions. A normally stable and well-balanced individual, he asked if he might be allowed to arrange them into a contextual whole. For my part, I hope the hole is deep enough. Jim, the podium is yours.
Well, I want you to know that none of us knew what the other person was going to say before we got up here, but I find it interesting that I start with a quote from Forrest Gump, who says, "Poetry is like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you have until you stick them in your ear." And that's about what we're going to do tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we present poetry as you like it. Now, Shakespeare will not be read tonight. He didn't enter the contest. But his famous 7 stages of life speech from As You Like It does give us a way to look at and listen to our finalists' poems. Did you have to memorize that speech in high school? All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players? Right. Well, if you do, you recall the 7 stages. The infant, mewling, and puking. You can see what Danny is talking about. The whining school child, creeping like snail, unwillingly to school. The lover, the soldier or adventurer. Well-dressed senior, spectacles on nose, pouch on side, hose a world too wide for the shrunk shank. And finally, the second child. Our poetry tonight reflects each of these stages, starting with the infant. Our first finalist poem tonight actually contemplates joy denied. The sudden realization that one will never experience the joy of mewling and puking children. I present the poet Perry Silvershantz to read her entry on the passing of my cherished womb, capital M, capital C, capital W, that was ta'en from me, capital T, this March 28 last, having been but 40 years and 8 months of age, and not yet bloomed, capital N, capital Y, capital B. Ladies and gentlemen, Perry Silvershines.
I felt the need to dress tonight. On the passing of my cherished womb, that was ta'en from me this last March 28th, having been but 40 years and 8 months of age, and not yet bloomed. With throbbing heart and heavy hand I write, oh, how the fibroid changed to sorrow my delight. Farewell, sweet orb unflowered, forever thy fertile earth unturned. No longer quickens hope each hour after Cupid's arrow towards thee burns. Dark the day that when burst forth that lump insidious, felt with trembling hand and dreadful awe. Despair and most stormy in me tossed, a baleful doom foretokened by thy flaw. The famed surgeon cried, lo, the dawn is nigh, and noon draws fast upon us. Bring thine lump hither, that I might feel it. Then, with weighted glance and tear-in eye, pronounced thy fate. I must cut to heal it. All flesh grass, all humors soon to ash. Time's relentless hourglass affords but one last freshet. With this concluding sip from Luna's passing chalice, oh, woe, thy spurtle ne'er again expected. Adieu, treasured fountainhead, my beloved womb. Alas, no more days sweetened by thy flow and ebb. Thy tide cut short untimely, oh, all too soon, wrenched cruelly from life's eternal web.
Delightful. Socks and all. Love it. Love it. Well, fortunately or not, the experience just immortalized by Perry is not shared by all of us. Many of us are blessed with the opportunity of watching our young children begin to explore the world around them. Such is the case in our next poem. The Grim Sweeper, submitted by the Stephen Dowling Botts Society of St. Joseph, Michigan, and there will be a quiz on that later on, and read tonight by that charismatic Flint personality that Sonny Elliott has taken as his model over the years, our own Norma Hall.
The Grim Sweeper. The blithe lark will not ascend today, the cheerful robin will not chirp, the madcap squirrels refuse to play, and the maple will not give syrup. They mourn as we for little Sean, who still dressed in his blue sleepers, toddled out into the street one day, into the path of a fearsome street sweeper. The awful brushes swept him up into the monster's dreadful yawn, and the mechanical beasts that day did sup on twigs and trash and Sean. They found his swept-up body among some branches, leaves, and a bottle. Poor little Sean will sing no more, or play, or romp, or toddle.
life, as you can see, is not always gentle on the young, nor, come to think of it, are the young always gentle on life, especially when they become whining school children. The poems of our next three finalists illustrate this case. First, Spring Song, written and read by the author, Tony Sutton from Jackson, Michigan. Tony?
This should have been among the manly men part. Grossly misguided. Well, yeah. True. Spring Song. Hooray for the tiny fairy babies who come with the warming days of spring. They doze in flowers and bowl with berries and dance on sunbeams while they sing. Tra-loo-la-la, tra-loo-la-lay. Listen to the fairy babies while they laugh and sing and play. The airy creatures think no thing, since most are drunk on ripened cherries, and sober up 'neath sparrows' wings to sprinkle pollen on the traveler who tarries. Fal-de-ral-rallo, fal-de-ral-ree, naughty, drunken fairy babies who torment pilgrims for your glee. But woe! For shame, the idle transient's boots, which squash a sprite at play. Watch out of ancient oaks along the common route. Toodle, toot, de-toot. Tweedle, tweet, de-dirt. Whistle while you walk, so the fairies won't get hurt. And woe to the scamp who skips school all day to run to the forest with bottles and nets, the naughtiest of games with the fairies to play by snaring the babies to take home for pets. Fee-fi-fo-fay, fo-diddle-dee-dee. Such vile young boys are ugly to see. Imagine the tiny, sad eyes in tears, blearily peering from their cold prison jars. Imagine their horrible fairy fears of being mounted on pins or dipped in tars. Fiddle-dee-diddle, fiddle-dee-rye, bad children who hurt fairies someday will cry. And fiddle-dee-too, you rascally brats. When fairies escape, you'll sure feel their wrath. They'll smite you with corns while flying on bats. They'll make you itch madly when you take your baths. So la-dee-da daily, and tra-la-la gaily. But always watch out for the spring's fairy babies.
I guess I was only thinking of my own children, Tony, when I saw them collecting those. And I thought that was something that a school child might do. And I see, at least myself, the same theme carried out in our next poem, although a little more mysteriously. For we can only suspect that a curious school child was responsible for the events detailed in, and I'm sure the author will straighten us out if I'm wrong, Parakeet Lament. Penned by Nancy Lockhart from Plainfield, Illinois, who has traveled all the way from beyond Chicago to here tonight to read it. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Lockhart.
Parakeet Lament. 'Tis true, 'tis true, my beloved beaked singer. You spent your final hour on the ringer of Mother's Maytag washing machine. 'Tis mean, 'tis mean. We did not see your head get caught. Your life was bought and all for naught without a hush. Through the wooden crush, You were squeezed. Why couldn't you have died of a disease? You came out flat as a pressed flower, but I had no book to keep you there that hour. Only sheets and underwear Mother kept washing through the squashing.
Finally, in detailing the devastation that young whining school children often wreak on society, one cannot overlook their impact on literature itself, as when they have to memorize a poem, like The Raven. Well, to save wear and tear on Poe's masterpiece, our next finalist, George B. Skidmore, has come all the way from Cranford, New Jersey, to offer us, as a sort of literary relief pitcher, The Chicken. George.
The chicken. Once upon a midday bright, while I strove a poem to write, there came a tapping on my windowsill. A beastie with a yellow bill. I thought for sure it was a bird, perhaps a duck. Then it said one word. The word was cluck. The constant pecking my sill was wrecking. So I raised the sash to let it in, hoping this would quell the din. With a flutter and zoom, it entered the room and landed square upon my back. Again, it said a word that wasn't quack. I knew for sure 'twas not a duck when the word it said was cluck. Was this an omen of evil or joy? Was this bird a girl or boy? Perhaps it would bring me luck by quoting a magic word. I listened, but all I heard was one more fateful cluck. When upon my head it did peck, I grabbed it by its scrawny neck. Then from its beak there came a squeak, like the brakes on my uncle's truck, as it tried once more to utter cluck. I thought of making chicken soup with a fowl that fled my neighbor's coop. I also thought of midnight picking on the carcass of a roasted chicken. With a flick of my wrist, its neck I did wring, so that it never more would sing. Yet from its craw where it was stuck came a single word, cluck. Once it was dead, I cut off its head. And then its feathers I started to pluck. Yet from this headless bird was heard, a noise was heard that sounded just like cluck. If you think this poem does suck, it's all because of what I wrote about a chicken that never more will quote, cluck.
Can't you see your children reciting that poem? And all the trips you'll make to get rubber duckies and their chickens? Well, if children manage to survive, or if we let them, as the case might be, they soon discover love and ask the gods, as does our next poet, may love prevail. Written by G. Menefree from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Is Mr. Menefree here tonight? Just checking. All right. Then the poem will be read by a scion of one of Flint's first families, Guy Moxham. So with all due reverence, let us all pray. May love prevail.
I am Guy Moxham. I am not a poet. May love prevail. Through cold and heat, spite rain and gale, neath slippery sleet, midst thunderous hail, my door you'll find, my heat derail, O meritorious maid of mail. O'er barren hill, cross sullen dale, I launch my private plaintive wail. But soon you'll come, flow nightingale, O merciful maid of mail. I watch for you from sunless gale, while along my lane rude neighbors hail you smiling, strolling at pace of snail. O majestic maid of mail, I know you'll be here, you cannot fail. As certain as in early spring, a ragged stalk of mottled kale remains unplucked, so like a missive from Dan Quayle. O marvelous maid of mail, I will not take a morning sail. I shall eschew the frothy grail, even overlook a damned hangnail. O magnificent maid of mail, alone, impatient, I've grown as pale as some feathery fading vapor trail. Surely you sense my sad travail, O mammiferous maid of mail. And yet I wait, and flail to no avail. My ardor for you I must impale like a huge sperm whale. While I dare exhale, I need you not. I have email.
Well, quite often that silent prayer, may love prevail, is answered. Each of us, deserving or not, finds our own hunk. Well, poet Ray Miller of Grand Ledge, Michigan will share with us now one submission and one moment from his submission, Hunks of Burning Love.
Actually, everything about the 50th anniversary of the end of the war in Europe made me think it was Hitler's golden wedding anniversary too, so. Hunks of Burning Love. On Adolf and Eva's wedding day, the Nazis were in disarray. The Reich was in its final spring. Das Fuhrer bought a diamond ring. Eva registered at Krupp's for good sidearms and nice teacups. Heinrich Himmler gave them a tank. The Eastern Front continuously shrank. Herr Ober called the Fuhrer, bring that bottle over here. The generals toasted the lovebirds with mugs of sparkling beer. Oh, my Liebchen, cried brave Eva, we have now lost everything. And look at Göring's tacky gift, a can of gasoline. Adolf gently dried her bitter tears. It matters not whatsoever. The Reich will live 1,000 years, and the diamond is forever. So Goebbels, stop your sniveling, you insufferable pamphleteer. Today we wed, soon we'll be dead, we'll light our funeral beer. So come to me, sweet Eva, we'll have our wedding dance. Me like any bridegroom with a fire in my pants. When the Russians found the bunker, cruelly closing the Allies' vice, they found some teeth a piece of bone, and a sprig of Edelweiss.
Inspiring. I can hear some local songwriter going back now and reworking a melody from the popular song from not too long ago, The Rose. Can't you hear someone just singing, "Just remember, in the winter, far below the snow and ice, lies the seeds that in the springtime will become our Edelweiss." Well, from love we turn our attention to the next stage of life, adventuring as a soldier of fortune. In keeping with Shakespeare's observation that soldiers often seek their fortune e'en in the cannon's mouth, our next finalist, Lynn Constant from Huntington Woods, Michigan, has appropriately written In Memoriam, June 25th, 1876. Read tonight by... Is Lynn here? No. Okay. Read tonight, I'm sorry, by Norma Hall.
As a former history teacher, I am most honored to read this poem. With a clop kerplop and a clink kerchink, their bridles like leathery gold, the cavalrymen rode out into the dawn. They were brave and courageous and bold. It was nearly noon when they reached the place near the banks of the Bighorn Little. The sun was high in the Montana sky, and so hot they couldn't even make spittle. They sat on their mounts, waited signal to charge, full of confidence, eager for victory. But all they received for their efforts that day was a bed and a box made of hickory. Oh, woe is me. Oh, woe is us. The cream of our crop has been curdled. Our pudding is lumpy and gritty. Our women are walking ungirdled. Oh, woe is me, oh, woe is us. To have happened, it must have been fated. My cameo is teary, my bustle's a droop. I have never felt so deflated. When he lived in Monroe, George would sit on the grass by the river raisin when the wind's in, and talk of the bravery of old Captain Cook, who was massacred in 1815 by Wyandot Indians. How could it have happened? Why, oh why, was his schooling at West Point phony? To die all disheveled, outmanned, and outfought by a warrior named for an insane pony. Oh, woe is me, oh, woe is us. It was arrogance, or maybe stupidity, that caused that disaster there on the plains and watered buffalo grass with red liquidity. The Georgie I knew when he lived in Monroe wasn't what you would call intellectual. He was dashing and gallant and handsome and brave, but in numbers and such, ineffectual. I'm sure he miscounted the enemy force. I'm sure he believed he would win. He kerchinked his troops into history and never kerplopped out again. All you youngsters out there, take a lesson from this. Pay attention to math or be bad off. You must learn to subtract and to add and divide. Custer wouldn't have died if he had of. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Oh, woe is me. Oh, woe is us.
If battlefields don't satisfy our literary taste for adventure, our next poet, Ann Eby from Alma, Michigan, suggests a spot in the north we're all familiar with. I therefore welcome Ann to read her poem, O Michigan, thy glory in which the poet bites off more than she can comfortably chew. Ann Eby.
O Michigan, thy glory, in which the poet, that's me, bites off more than she can comfortably chew. O Michigan, idyllic place to be. Thy counties are thy glory, and there are 83. Their names roll out like jewels from off my fevered tongue. Midland, Monroe, Mecosta, Mason, Montcalm, Macomb. Oh, Ottawa, Otsego, Ogama, Livingston, Oscoda, Ontonagon, Old Clinton, and Calhoun. Ionia, Barry, Eaton, Sheboygan, Branch, and Wayne. Oh, Michigan, I seek thy like in vain. From Schoolcraft to St. Joseph, from Hillsdale to Marquette, if there's a sweeter state to see, I haven't seen it yet. I sing a song of Washtenaw, of Delta and Tuscola, of Leelanau and Keweenaw, of Iron and Osceola, of Manistee, Menominee, of Berrien and Luce, of Allegan and Alger, of Charlevoix and Cass, Gogebic, Montmorency, Roscommon, and St. Clair. Have patience, gentle readers, for we are halfway there. Well, 83 is quite a few. Our brain is getting numb. But on to Isabella and to Huron in the thumb. Oh, Michigan, I celebrate thy greatness, and praises too to mighty Mac, which spans thy separateness. Oh, Michigan, thy counties are sweet beyond compare. Oh, Kalamazoo, Kalkaska, oh, Jackson, Crawford, Clare. We much admire Gratiot and also sing of Oakland. Elkona, too, deserves our praise, and Dickinson and Houghton. Now Aranac and Mackinac, Newaygo, Benzie Bay, and Saginaw and Sanilac and Pleasant Lenawee. With Baraga and Chippewa, we'll finish up the top, and now Presque and Emmett. Lord, if only we could stop! Well, onward, ever onward, oh Michigan. I guess I love thy counties, but I wish that there were less. Now, praise we our grand traverse, Alpena, and Lapeer, Iosco, Gladwin, Wexford. Folks, the end is getting near. So on to Antrim, Ingham, Van Buren, Kent, and Lake. We're almost done. Stop fidgeting. Set still, for heaven's sakes. This blasted thing. Muskegon, Shiawassee, Genesee, Missaukee, Oceana. And whew, that's 83. Now, folks, you're bored. I'm sorry. The fault, it is not mine. Please blame those early Michigants who drew the county lines. I could have saved you many yawns had it been up to me. I'd have made 20 counties instead of 83.
But we don't want to make assumptions, and we would be remiss if we did not point out all of those soldiers of fortune who choose Michigan as opposed to the battlefield, of the challenge that poet Lou Welty of Davison, Michigan pinpoints in our next submission. Read by Linda Moxham, the challenging Sprigtybe Ib Bitchigan.
Break a leg.
Sprigtybe id Bitchigud. Sprig is just around the corner, which rebides be I bust order extra Kleenex, cough drops, and a big jar of Vicks. 'Cause when I walk into downtown, my nose will come a running down, and I'll find myself in an unfixable fix. Beautiful spring in Michigan. Look, over there. I see a robin. Watch him go. His head a-bobbing. Now he's listening. Thinks he hears a worm. Now he's got him. Now he's dot.
Boy, they're really getting hot.
I only wish you could see that werb squirb. Dow, his wife comes near to watch it. Dow, she's afraid he's gotta botch it. Dow, he's got him, eats half, she gets the other, and they leave looking for a d'other. Sprig, sweet sprig, and bitchy good. Buds are bursting, soon they will bloom, filling the air with fragrant perfume. Streams have belted, go a-rippling. The water seems happy to be a-trickling. A most wonderful, wonderful time is spring in Michigan. Thank you.
Yes, and that was a challenge.
Yes, it was.
I think we give her another hand. That was. And speaking of challenges, the leap from being a soldier or adventurer to the seeker of justice is quite difficult for some. And you'll discover just what I mean as you listen to our next two finalist poems. First, poet Mike Kelly from Southfield, Michigan, questions justice in an urban setting in his insightful Dress Right Dress. Mike Kelly.
Every bad poem should have a conceit, which does not refer to the vanity of the writer. And the conceit of this poem is that it is written with exactly the same number of letters in every line so that you have both a right-hand and left-hand margin. I don't know if this will print properly because it depends on typeface, but Dress Right Dress, those of you who have been in the military, you will understand the reference to that. It refers to both the left and right-hand margins. The mighty Matterhorns of Manhattan, teetering over teetotaling teachers, telling tedious tales to tepid kids, kidding, cantankerous, all kinds of fellows feeling further fallen, a pond of pulsing, pounding pressure, thinking through the theory that we actually accepted, acting awfully, and behaving beastly to bother brothers craving calories. Can costly curios sold separately suffice to sate us? Neither neighbors nor naughty nuns, winking within warming wimples worn, wrapped around radiant arrangements arising from faces feigning flushes, rosily fingering dawn's early light, allows lascivious lowlifes letting down dawn. Doubtful dancing decides our order on one offense, open only to terse testimony, trying to topple. We saw what we saw down by the seashore, sore and sorry, singing songs about abundance and bold boundaries. Marked the Manhattan Monday morning, gone wrong.
Well, seeking justice, as we now discover, is just as difficult in the suburban bowling alleys of our country as on the broad ways of our metropolitan centers. We learn this from another Stephen Dowling Botts Society submission entitled 290, or The Fates Roll a Strike. Oh, let the heavens open wide and let grief pour down unbounded, and weep for poor old Harry Snide, whose hopes died quite unfounded. Poor Harry was a CPA whose life romance had scorned. All that he had to pride himself was that he was a bowler borned. Each Tuesday night he'd swell with pride as his bowling shirt he'd don, resplendent, yes, in shimmering gold, his name in bright letters read upon. No longer an accountant dull was he, but a fearsome knight errant, fighting the Saracens on a crusade, a warrior bold and gallant. King Arthur's knights no prouder than he, Achilles bore not a fiercer name. His enemy, the bowling pins, his quest, the perfect game. But long though Harry stalked the lanes, his life from fame was sundered. A bowler he'd been for 40 years, but he'd never rolled 300. Yet on one special perfect night, the ball was rolling true. Strike after strike our Harry rolled, and now only one was left to do. O'Malley's alleys fell silent then, as Harry held the ball and eyed the distant pins out there, prepared to give his all. But as they drew back his ebon sphere, his feet slipped, the witness said. The ball went straight up in the air and came down right on his head. It bounced right off his shattered skull. Oh, spare me the words I must utter. The faithless ball rolled down the lane and straight into the gutter. Should we at last our faith despair and believe that God doesn't care, that at the end he couldn't even give old Harry a spare? Well, life is never easy, as you can tell. Each year brings new challenges, each stage new adjustments. And so it is with the antepenultimate stage when we have the trouble, as Shakespeare so aptly pointed out, even with the clothes we wear. However, when our shank shrinks, say that 3 times, there is a spot where we can go. And Guy Moxham, reading Swartz Creek poet Mabel Dutch's Ode to Florida, tells us all about this spot. Guy?
Ode to Florida. There is a camp in Florida where clothes are not allowed, a place where come to celebrate the naked and the proud. Young John Young from Michigan ventured to this park. He thought a nude vacation would be a pleasant lark. He swam, he danced, he bingoed. He had a lovely time. Now this would be the perfect place to end this little rhyme. But once John was traipsing to a place that bears his name, he met an alligator who was anything but tame. John tried to run the other way, but sadly now he found with fear his feet were rooted to the unrelenting ground. The alligator smiled and thought, I see a tasty meal. Before his fellow campers heard John's anguished squeal, the gator snapped and cruelly bit John's unprotected back. And then he whirled and bit John's front, causing quite a lack. Now John is back in Michigan, somewhat the worse for wear. And as to sunny Florida, I'm never going there.
Well, now you can see what happens when the clothes you wear come off. And other things. Well, there will come a time, if life doesn't deal us a cruel blow, first of all, when we arrive at this final stage of life, our second childhood. And once again, we seem to take most delight in sitting around and observing the marvels of the natural world that dazzled us as children and dazzle us once again, like those described in our last finalist poem, The Dung Beetle Hoedown, composed and read by Dean Nicolai from Jackson, Michigan. Dean?
Just a word of introduction. Not too long ago on public TV, there was a show called Waste Not, Want Not, emphasis on the waste. I think it's time that we give the dung beetle her due. Dung beetle hoedown. Bow to your partner. Now bow to your corner. It is a peculiarity of my species to be out there dancing with feces. Roll a ball, roll a ball. I'll do-si-do my fetid partner home to feed my young'uns when they come. A gift from the great sphincter above. To nourish the product of dung beetle love. Roll a sphere, roll a sphere. The hot desert floor bakes my ceramic treasure, decreasing the coefficient of friction beyond measure. As to my partner's beauty, I can't rant. In fact, she could use some disinfectant. Roll a globe, roll a globe. Tussle, tussle, toil and trouble, an odoriferous phoenix rising from the rubble. Comes my brother for no idle banner. He's after the revered fecal matter. Roll an orb, roll an orb. You see, my ancestors did the same for me, sumo wrestling interlopers during the journey. A lifestyle you may think is tragic, but soon I'll appear on National Geographic. Roll a ball, roll a ball.
Thank you, poets. Thank you, readers. And I, for one, think in Jim Home we found a new Ed Wood of poetry reading. I have in my hand 3 envelopes containing the 3rd place, 2nd place, and 1st place winners in this year's contest. It would be impossible to wring another ounce of tension out of the room, so without further ado, let's present the winners. And Leslie Moore, the great-granddaughter of Julia Moore, has kindly consented to read the winners. The 3rd place winner is... Bear with it.
It's big time in Michigan.
Lou Welty. The 2nd place winner, and it will not be as tough, I guarantee you.
The chicken, George B. Skitty.
I appreciate this. I don't usually win many things. That's because I don't give out prizes for worse things very often. Thank you.
And the 1st place grand prize winner, the worst poem of the year.
In Memoriam, Lynn Constant.
I want to dedicate this win in memoriam to my parents in memoriam, who moved by dumb luck to Monroe, where everything is named for Custer. And I think it's the only place in the world that honors a person who's known for making such a stupid mistake. So thank you. This is a lot of fun.
I hope all of you enjoyed tonight's program as much as the people who had a hand in putting this together. and we're not afraid of saying, what's the worst that could happen? If you haven't had enough of this nonsense, this program will be rebroadcast on Saturday Spectrum on WFBE, Saturday at noon. Obviously, it will also be rebroadcast on Comcast sometime in the future. Thank yous to all those who entered the contest, the family of Julia A. Moore, who put up with all this nonsense with such great good cheer, the Friends of the Flint Public Library who sponsored it, and of course, Danny Rendelman, Jan Worth, Linda Moxham, Guy Moxham, Jim Holm, and Norma Hall. And last but not least, the immortal Julia A. Moore, whose legacy has touched us all here tonight. She may have been misunderstood and even ridiculed in her life. That was not our intention tonight. Her spirit has prompted hundreds of otherwise non-poetical people to take up pen and arm wrestle with the muses. She has brought us joy, humor, and a sense of fun to literature, and helped people laugh at ourselves, and helped all of us laugh with each other. And that's not a bad legacy. We have booklets containing all the winners and the honorable mention poems in this year's contest, as well as the hard-to-get festival t-shirts for sale in the back of the room. Please stay and have refreshments, talk with the poets, argue with the judges, talk to the presenters, and tell us just how awful this evening was. And last but not least, console the winners and congratulate the losers. Thank you and good night.